and I just talked about the social media integration, that would fall under the Project Selene. Now, under Project EO, this is really representing more the simplified client and potentially web-based access, like Frank talked about. SceneGate is a fork of Alchemy, and it's really geared towards the majority of OpenSim users. Edugate is what we want to call the Singularity version. Now, Frank and his organization, they have done a very simple implementation of Singularity. We have that available. We'd like some people to test that. It is in our Bitbucket. And we're going to do one more version of that based on some of the testing that we've done so far. We know there are a couple of things that need to be added back in, and Frank and I have already agreed on that. WebGate is probably going to be the name for a web-based viewer that we would like to put together and make that available to the community. Now, on the server side, as I mentioned, we're going to have server support, which means we need to be able to have control over that code during the research and development. So Helios is where anything that's associated with server-side work, any modules that might need to be created, are going to happen. And we want the I'm a Box, which is an extension of the Moses in a Box project, to be platform agnostic. We want it to have the ability that someone could say, okay, I'm going to fire up an I'm a Box, and I'm going to connect to this Metaverse Depot grid, which is our R&D grid, and it will be truly plug and play. And that is in development. We've had some success with it so far. We're going to continue that. Now, on the test grid side, we have several test grids that are set up. One is running 09, one is running 0821, and one will be running a newer version of 083, which will have the modules and some fixes that were not rolled into OpenSim in the past few years. And of course, now all of that is really geared towards supporting the existing community. Every end user out there, from entertainers all the way to instructors, educators, trainers, we want to support everybody. And we know that there's immediate things that need to be done to do that. So that's part of our focus. But all of that is really a basis for a future project, which is to begin work towards the next generation of virtual world platform. The source code needs to be modernized. It needs to really be looked at for more of a cloud-based architecture philosophy. We need to look at industry standards, coding standards, fully documented, proper APIs, so that we can attract other software application providers to utilize OpenSim and to be able to easily integrate with them. So, research and development, that's really a lot about what we're doing. And as I mentioned, everything is based on requirements. We would like to achieve platform agnostic goals. We know that's not always going to be totally possible, but we'll do the best we can to try to be there. One of the requirements that we hear from the industry side of the house is simulator segregation, where one simulator, what happens there, we don't want it to impact the rest of the grid, and also from a security perspective. Now, the machine virtualization is something that really applies on the cloud side and virtual machines to try and increase the parameters for performance. And then we also heard from, especially on the education side, they don't necessarily have the technical skills to be an administrator, and they want this to be something they can use very quickly without a whole lot of budget that needs to be set aside for technical administration. And in a lot of cases, they're using students to do their administration. So it really needs to be as non-technical as possible. I already mentioned the coding standards, industry standards, compliance, and why those are important. But finally, a predictable roadmap. When we talk with IT departments, they tell us that they won't touch an open source project that does not have a predictable roadmap, because then it's very difficult for them to fit that into the processes and procedures that they have available to them. So that means we have to have a roadmap. And that roadmap, this is a very broad overview type roadmap here, was to build upon some prior documented research. We are doing that. To begin with the last stable release of Open Simulator on the advice of IT department, to conduct some very extensive testing to identify and resolve any issues that may still exist with that, to develop a template VM, one that people can say, oh, use this hypervisor, install this image, and fire it up, you're ready to go. We have done that. The template has been done. Janisa, I give him credit for that. It's a great job. And we are also securing the depot grid. We have Steph Nygaard is now working with us, looking at that and hosting some of our test grids. Now, when we implement a production grid plan, the depot grid is a project in itself, because we want to be able to monitor traffic, do load testing through that depot grid, and have it serve as a portal to the hypergrid. And this will come up with some new things we'll be offering for free to other grids out there and particular users as well. Now, all of this needs to be coordinated, and it has to be coordinated with a team. So we put together an IMA development team, and we are going to invite more people into that as soon as the repositories go from private to public status. But overall, to take this engineering approach, we need to make sure we have adequate system design, which currently is not there in all the documentation that we can find. So we'll need to do a system design of OpenSim as it is today, and that will help provide a basis for a system design for that next generation of virtual software. In order to do all of that, we've got to do. This crowd here knows very well. We have come up with a plan we may help get a lot of that documentation done. Then finally, we want to have really good regression testing for the project. And we're not isolating from other versions of OpenSim. We are testing other versions. We would like to help. And this will all be public repository information. So any work that we do is available to the other development team. Now, when I talk about the depot grid, this is really just a concept diagram. But basically, the way it works is we have 4 VMs that are currently running on the server. The first virtual machine is running robust in all of the grid services. The second VM is serving several regions. The third VM is serving several regions. And the fourth is serving several regions. We had a 5th VM, which was remote, was connected. And Janisa can tell you more about his experience on that. What we're doing right now, the CPU allocation is fine within the virtualized environment, but the memory allocation is sort of guesswork as we go through and do some testing. So we're doing that now. But whatever happens on one particular virtual machine does not impact the other, and so the grid performance is actually pretty stable. This grid has been up since, I believe, April or May of this year. And we've definitely done a lot of testing. We're doing some massaging now and securing the grid itself before we open it up to just about any user who would want to register. Right now, registration is by approval only, so that we can limit the variables in our research. Are there any questions? I noticed a comment from Krista. Thank you. That would be very much appreciated.
We do have some questions, Lisa. Let's see, Marcus opened with, have you considered using WebRTC for screen sharing? It can use open codes that almost any browser can support at good quality or very low latency. And I'll put that in the chat log too.
Hey, Frank, you want to address that one?
Yeah, well, we have looked at that sort. We have looked at that sort of technology, and yes, it is a candidate. We did not choose for that because we already had something running there, and yeah, it's definitely also something to consider. Yes.
Thank you. And from Kaylee, we had a question. Will any of this be available for Second Life also?
In terms of the viewer, is that what your question is?
It'll take her a moment to hear it. So let's see, there is a comment just so you saw. Kudos for your conscientious approach from JJ Edenverse Drinkwater. I'll let Kaylee answer that in the chat. And while Kaylee's providing that to you, let's go to our next question. From Serene Huntress. If you want to support everybody, does that include low-income people with older or higher-end computers?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I see that Kaylee typed a yes. With regard to compatibility with Second Life, we would love to maintain that compatibility. And our focus is to meet the needs of the OpenSim community. If the viewers if they would still connect to Second Life, great. We would love for people to do that. But we really have no control over the direction that Linden Labs takes.
So, may I say something?
Sure.
Yeah, well, one thing is to integrate it into the viewer to having two, but if it gets too difficult, well, you still might have two viewers, one for OpenSim and one for Second Life. Mm-hmm. It's not that difficult to have two viewers on your computer if you want to.
Right. And I wanted to address the question about low-end computers. This is definitely something that we keep in mind, not only just for the people with low income, but you have small businesses who really don't have a lot of money to buy high-end computers for their employees. You have government agencies who are still running very, very old systems, especially in remote locations. You have universities, public school systems. A lot of them have low-end systems. So it's important that we do test on low-end systems, and I do that. And I'm sure that Frank can attest to the variations in the IT requirements that his company has.
Yes. Well, we are not a small company, of course. We are a very large company. But the most problematic things that we have is the fact that when we set up, we started with Second Life to start our research to use this technology. And the first thing that happened is after we had a successful, because we had a private island in Second Life to do these all kinds of things. But the first thing what happened was that our colleagues from the UK were forbidden to use it because of security reasons. And that's one threat that comes through all of the things we're doing. We set up a number of experiments that involved Thales companies in Italy, in Germany, and every time it was not done because of security. And that is one major aspect of it. So looking at viewers, we had a little discussion with Cordef yesterday about it. With regard to the viewers, but also OpenSim, you need technologies that will convince the IT departments that they can install and work with these things. That is important. So the technology that is used in the viewers and in the servers should comply to modern security standards. Otherwise, they will not be accepted.
Exactly, and you know that's why it's key that we do focus on industry standard compliance, not just for security, but also for accessibility. In the United States, we have a feature called 508 compliance, and it's a regulation that every publicly funded university or school, as well as all public agencies with the government, must comply with. And this is really covered very well under W3C, which is our web standards, but it is not something that was applied to the viewer design when Linden Labs originally made the Second Life viewer. The other thing that is not compliant are usability guidelines. The best we could find in terms of available skin was that Starlight Kui skin for the viewers, which is the reason we have initially selected that. We may end up getting people who want to contribute come up with a better skin. That's great. One of the questions that I saw in here when I was reading back through the chat was how was this going to be maintained and upgraded for both the medium and long run? That's a great question. We have a Bitbucket set up. These projects are open source. We want to make sure that everyone who wants to participate can do that, and we'll maintain the open source project. This will be something that is part of IMA's mission to advance the virtual world technologies. What we would like to do to make sure that the development is sustainable is to actually go after some grant money that will provide the funding necessary to keep the development sustained, but we may also look into a bounty type system for the developers, because developers do a lot of good work and they need to be paid. We can't always come up with money to pay them like a large company can, but we can certainly champion the project, and that's something that we want to do.
I saw a question from Steve. Is any of the Thales project going to be open source? Yes. What we handle, what we do with these projects is in fact the same what other companies do in open source. We like open source. We use open source, so we want to contribute back to open source. The contribution here will be, for instance, the voice over IP part that has been developed by us. We paid VCOM to do it, but it will be open source. We did an update to the LSL editor in the past so that it will run with also the OpenSim primitives and have some nice additional features. So yes, we will contribute back. In the end, of course, we want to use it to put in our products and to sell it. That's, of course, one of the reasons that we're doing it. But we will certainly put things back in open source.
Okay, thanks, Frank. I wanted to address Chris's question, who is funding me? No one is funding me. My company, as well as Selby Evans, who is a contributor to IMA as partner, we are funding the projects for the IMA since its inception and for the future. There is another question here, the perspective relating to security, both from the server side or the viewer side. I believe it's both. Wouldn't you say, Frank?
Yes, I think it's both. It's the communication between the simulator and the viewer, but also the way the viewer and the simulator internally are built.
there were 2 more questions, just so you know. We had Art Blue asked, does a viewer version exit where you can customize the starting page so it looks really made for this project? And then there's a second part to the question.
When we talked about user interface customizable, has to do with also the man-machine interface. So now if you look at the viewer, you have all the buttons and things to be able to control the viewer in OpenSim to build, to do things. Now, first of all, you want to have this whole set of interfaces to be minimized for people that only want to access OpenSim and don't do anything else. But furthermore, suppose that you run something in OpenSim and you want to add certain buttons on your user interface to control what you're doing in OpenSim. So it's more than only the front page, it's also actually the buttons, the drop-down menus, everything that you want to make it custom. Not only for using OpenSim, but also in combination with what OpenSim is doing in that certain perspective. In that way, it looks a little bit like what Christina has done with her viewer, except adding new functionality in the sense that you can also add menus that go into the virtual world and control the things that you have used the OpenSim for.
Right. And one of the things that we've talked about at some of the IMA meetings would be that it might be a really good goal to make the viewers white label, so that a particular school system may want to put their own look on it, have their own skin that is really geared towards what they want to do. So it kind of fits in together with what Frank has talked about and the work that Krista did with Unlook and Incita.
I had another question. I see, do you have particular universities in the Netherlands who may be able to work with our institution on some aspects? It could be, but we're working with the universities, and the universities themselves more or less determine what they want to do. But I would be glad to make a connection and see if the universities are also willing to work with your institutions.
And I noticed that Lear copied Chris's comment. I thought I mentioned that before. I very much welcome anything that you want to contribute. So, Krista, I'd love to get together with you about what you have to bootstrap the documentation effort.
Well, on that note, let me get back to the other. I want to thank our presenters. Thank you, Lisa and Frank, for a terrific presentation. As a reminder to our audience, you can see what's coming up on the conference schedule at conference.opensimulator.org. And following this session, the next session will begin at 10:30 a.m. in this keynote region, and it is entitled Immersive Audiobook for Avatars. Also, we want to encourage you to visit the OSCC 18 Poster Expo in the OSCC Expo 3 region to find accompanying information on presentations and explore the Hypergrid tour resources in OSCC Expo 2 region, along with the sponsor and crowdfunder booths located throughout all of the OSCC
Simulator Community Conference. As a reminder to our in-world and web audience, you can view the full conference schedule at conference.opensimulator.org and tweet your questions or comments to @OpenSimCC with the hashtag OSCC18. This session, we're happy to introduce a terrific presentation called Everything You Want to Know About the Educator's Commons. Our speaker today is Kay McLennan. Dr. Kay McLennan is the Director of Online Learning and Educational Technologies at the Tulane University School of Professional Advancement, where she holds the title of Senior Professor of Practice. Kay created the Tulane SOPA Metaverse and has been creating and using virtual world learning simulations in her online economics and business studies courses since 2008. Welcome all. Let's begin the session.
Galen, thank you. And to the audience members that I'm looking out on, I just thought it might be fun. I'm filling in here with perhaps some weather-related delays in our panelists showing up. And I thought it might be fun to just talk about the Educator Commons that is in the OS grid on Wright Plaza. And let me put in the, if I can, here we go. Here's the hyperlink into the chat for anybody that wants to take a look at the Educator Commons and some of the other resources there. Again, as I'm looking out into the audience, I can see that most of the attendees are even more senior and open sim than myself. So I'm hoping maybe at the end we'll have a little bit of a audience participation for tips and tricks for new OpenSim users. I sorted the age of the attendees in the radar and did see that there were, a few attendees that were fairly new. Of course, they may be just new to this grid versus, OpenSim. What the Educator Commons was envisioned when I noticed an empty store, it just sort of hit me like a flash a few years ago. It was a place to kind of coordinate giving folks that are new to OpenSim a leg up. And I've both built in resources, like right in front of the building is a mesh character sitting on a bench reading a copy of the Hypergrid Business. And so if somebody clicks on the newspaper, they'll get a link to that publication. Also, there are mailboxes that folks can drop note cards to me by the front door and upstairs. Let's say you have some content you want to share with some of the others in the community. You're welcome to send it to me to set up here. Or, of course, Valerie Hill is starting to create a virtual database, virtual content and resource database. So that's something new coming online. I believe she said in April. So right inside the front door of the Educator Commons, we're kind of like taking a little tutorial tour here, is a setup with the affordances of virtual world learning simulations. So you can grab a note card to, tell your dean or administrator what it is you want, some resources to be devoted to. There's also Fleet or Chris Collins Science Lab kit. She has agreed to let that be given away at Educator Commons, and she just draws your attention to the copyright statement that's in it. It's been released under our Creative Commons license. If we move upstairs, the resources are set up in terms of land and facilities, also scripting, and there's a link to an island in the OS grid. It was previously called Script Library, but is now called Script Magic. Lots of great resources there. And by the way, I went over through the Educator Commons this morning and did a little mini test of the resources and links and corrected what I could. But this has reminded me I need to go over there and scrub everything once again. There's also another section of learning activities. And I have set up kind of some interview chairs, and I'm not ready to jump into this now, but something I had envisioned for the future is a little interview series about Meet the Educators and OpenSim. And the final part of the Educator Commons is showcase landmarks on the roof, where you can get landmarks to different islands and simulations, both in OpenSim and around, and tour some great builds. One of my favorites is the Alice Island in the Franco grid. Oh my gosh, it's fantastic. And of course, once you're at Wrights Plaza, there's just a assortment of shops, and the Freebies headquarters. I guess it's about a 3 or 4 story high building just chock full of freebies. And so it's always fun to go around and get content that you might need for your grid. So I wanted to open it up for a few minutes. I know there's a lot of fun things scheduled during this break period out on the different expo regions. But did anybody have any comments? Is there anything that you might like to share with somebody that's new to OpenSim, your favorite tip or trick? And I'll jump in while folks are typing in and tell you my biggest and best tip is if you've res something, be it a single prim or another multi-prim object, and you can't keep control of it, the only thing you need to do is to change your camera angle. I realize that's really simple to everybody here, but I'm telling you, it took me a long time to figure that one out. So let's see. Oh, and Shelby has put in a link to one of his blogs about freebies. And also, of course, don't forget Fred's Outworld. Boy, that's just the best resource for freebies. Now, I know you all are old hands in there, out in the audience.
I just want to just say that I have been to both the Wright Plaza and the Educators Commons, and they really are a wonderful resource. So if any of you haven't actually been over there, I would definitely recommend it. Absolutely.
And of course, please drop off some inventory you might like to share. We will give you full credit for sharing. And Joyce is adding how there's free training in building on the Abacon grid, which includes Primland, a walkthrough, homage to Candyland, to learn to build. And boy, Joyce, you're reminding me I have to put up links to those resources in the Educator Commons, especially Primland. What a neat building tutorial. And Joyce says, okay, Sally Davis also does tutorials, and I'm going to put these links in the Educator Commons.
I just want to jump in here for 1 second. Is it Caro or Caro? Bay Ray says, name, if you drop something off in inventory, please name everything, or the person ends up with an inventory full of objects. So, or primitive, or whatever its default name is. So, yes.
Back to you to wrap up.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kay, so much for hopping in and helping us fill up some time. And thank you for a terrific presentation. As a reminder to our audience, you can see what's coming up on the conference schedule at conference.opensimulator.org. Following this session, I would like to invite you all to explore the Expo regions. That's Expo Zones 1, 2, 3, and 4. I will be holding myself an impromptu light listening concert in the Nuns Chapel in Expo Zone 2 in booth number 6. And the music is playing there already, and I will join you over there. I am one of the honorary nuns, and so I will see you there in costume, playing some light listening music and sounds from the season. After that, there will be a break, and then the next session will begin. Let me see if I can get the name for that very quickly. That's Techland, Evolution of a Virtual World, and that will start at 12 noon. Thank you all, and we will see you all there. Bye now.
For the login address. So, you know, the idea that you're in your own machine, like you live in your own house, and then go out for a walk or travel somewhere and then come back. I like that kind of metaphor. And it also, the other thing is, again, with security, I feel that if my inventory and all my assets are in my own machine, on my own grid, then I just feel instinctively more secure, because when I go out, it's my choice whether to give things to somebody or stuff like that. I am aware, of course, that people can also.
Well, you're not agreeing to let someone put a camera in your pocket that they can, like, listen when you go home and look around when you're going into your bathroom. That's kind of, seeing with the internet, a lot of what we're finding, or a lot of what is going on.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, you know, back in the old days, you know, a lot of people of my generation were horrified at the source of identity cards. You know, long before the web and anything like that, probably even long before the chip and pin is a bank, you know, we just thought that was the oppressive state, you know. But I must say, my attitude to that was, I just loved the idea, right, of a kind of ID card, because I thought, well, I can program it with everything I want and then carry that information about and offer it to people when they need it. But it never occurred to me that it would develop the other way around, which is where the external parties are doing all the putting my information in, and half the time I go to try and look up my data and I'm told, oh, you can't access your own data. It's, you know, belongs to the government. You know?
Or Facebook, you know, Zuckerberg,
Facebook,
all of just all the stuff that you do on Facebook, but on Spotify, on Amazon, just, you know, it's like this conglomerate, because they do track and trace what you do everywhere. And then there's the whole shadow profiles, which even if you don't have a Facebook account, you have a Facebook account. It's just, it's creepy as hell. Or forget my language there, but you get what I'm saying.
So it's, you know, it's, there's no such thing as 6 degrees of separation anymore. You know,
if you're
not on Facebook, you think it's no problem. But if you've got
you are on Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, you're on Facebook. You know.
Yeah, if you've got a friend who's on Facebook, you're on Facebook too.
Exactly. Yep.
It's as simple as that. So you can't get away with it. I just take great delight in the only thing I've ever posted to Facebook are Facebook's articles critical of Facebook. And
it's not. I want to make a point here, if you'll forgive me. It isn't simply Facebook. I don't want to like go in on like, you know, let's bash Zuckerberg. No, it's Google, it's Amazon. If we obliterated Facebook today, there's like 3 companies I can think of that would step in and fill the void: Microsoft, Amazon, and Google, and probably more than that.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's. I think for Facebook gets the dirt, I think, mostly because they've got a very overt attitude, shall I say, rather than a covert attitude to that. And, you know, they were early and they got ridiculously big really fast. But yes, you're right, Google and the whole Microsoft. I think Microsoft are worse than Facebook in many ways. But anyway, we're not here to go into that. I'll get myself into trouble. It's okay on my show, but not here. Right, Leighton, I'm going to come back to you because one of the other things that you've sort of, well, there are 2 things really developed recently, I should say. One is H3 Traveller, your blog, which is publishing a lot of, you know, records of destinations and things like that. So you, in a way, are providing a curated service that, you know, whereas something like OpenSim World and Iberica are strict listings, you are sort of doing a sort of thing that is curating on the same level. You know, you're recording where you go and telling people about it. But also, secondly, you've exemplified what the hypergrid is about, because, of course, you do run different grids. You've got Out and Proud, for example, is a very specific grid, and you would never probably easily see that in a walled garden place like Second Life, or even as a major grid in its own right, but because of the hypergrid, you're able to build and expand something like that within a greater network without doing a second thought. You know, nobody's going to come along and say, "Hey, you know, we're rednecks, we didn't do it." You know, so you know, you very much typify in some ways what possibilities there and what you're doing. So I don't know, maybe I'd summarize both the grids you've got and the blogs you've got.
Yeah, Hypergrid Traveller is a culmination of a long arc that started when I first arrived, because when I came to OpenSim, I was in Second Life probably a couple of months and kind of didn't really get on with it, and I found Open Simulator and have loved it ever since. I very rarely kind of get into Second Life. I did a Masters in Virtual Education there that kept me going back in there. But one thing I found about Open Simulator is I just love the idea of being able to move around different grids, different regions, because they all have their own little quirks and looks and appearances and appeals to different community groups. So Hypergrid Traveller is the culmination of that. I didn't want it to be a kind of another online directory, because I kind of want to know, well, what did you think about it when you got there? Did you enjoy it? Did you dislike it? What was it about that? So I kind of went for more of a travel log feel. So I'm talking to, there's person of interest interviews. I've spoken to some people and interviewed them, asked them some questions. There's also region reviews. There's shopping. There's all sorts of things. So I just wanted to kind of bring all the information together in one place, because I found that a lot of it was scattered everywhere. Yeah. And you kind of had to root around, and you know, being and living in a networked environment like OpenSim, everything isn't at hand, so you have to root around and dig, and for new people that might be quite tricky to start with. So there's kind of like the welcome regions for all the grids. I've got all like listings, and so it's a kind of a one-stop shop travel log, and that's pretty much it. And my Out and Proud Grid is an LGBT community, just to kind of wave the pride flag over the hypergrid.
Yeah, indeed. And of course, as you say, it's psychotherapy and things that you do as well, which of course is, you know, another way of using, you know, a smaller region on the hypergrid for very specific kind of task. In your case, a very social task. So in another case, it might be just somebody wanting to open up a meeting house for a book club that only ever reads the works of one author. You know, you know, it can be as big or as small as you like, and that is really the beauty of it. And also always open to expansion. You know, start with 4 regions, end up with 400. You know, if you need them.
And I think it gives a great entry point for communities that are just forming, because you don't have obviously all the huge server overheads and all that sort of thing. So you can really start small and build up over time, and you don't have the problem of, you know, assets suddenly disappearing or the grid going down and stuff like that. So I think it's a great community tool, and because
our
it's
loans expired, we gotta like close the grid in 3 weeks.
Yeah. And I think what I love about it is you can kind of do lots of things with OpenSim, so you can set it up in a very secure way for things like counselling, psychotherapy, mental health services, those types of things, or you can have a wide open configuration, and I like that kind of capacity to move between those different setups.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as Maria Kovalev used to say, you know, we've got the dark metaverse, you know, when you talk about OpenSim stats and everything else, but after, you know, there's a lot happening out there that is deliberately off the hypergrid for privacy or purposes or whatever, and you know, we don't know almost the extent of what is out there. We tend to only know what is public. So, you know,
and that's great. We don't know, you know, that's
good.
Wonderful part of freedom. You know, yeah, I had a thought there and then I lost it. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, I'm just looking at my clock, and I've got a feeling somebody's going to be telling me you've got a few minutes left in a second. So. A couple of things to get in here. I'm terrible at reading audience questions. Leah may be very good at that, so I'm going to ask Leah in a second if she's seen any pertinent questions to finish with. But the other thing I wanted to get in here, right, is that the OpenSim community, the users as such, really got kind of sad a bit about the closure of Google+. It hasn't happened yet, it's still 10 months away, but there was this thing of looking for other sources. And a lot of, Google+, it really annoys me a bit because I tend to find it gives me a lot of spam because you friend a person on Hypergrid and they like, posting about all sorts of things nothing to do with the virtual world. And the same with the groups. A lot of people have gone to MeWe, which actually looks more like Facebook, but behaves a lot more like Google+, and I find it more satisfying, but actually prone to some of the problems with Google+. But something I did, I guess it was back, I was talking with Pathfinder and Thurza earlier in, was it this year or last? I can't remember, to be honest. But I'd had a private, a corporate Discord server for a while. And sometimes I thought, well, let's make a bigger one, which is Hypergrid-wide, so that people, in the absence of being able to communicate properly over the Hypergrid with voice to text, we could at least have a server on Discord that, it's got all the news and things like that, but then I've created channels as required, when and as required, for any individual grid that wants a channel in that main server. Its whole function really is to bring the whole hypergrid together insofar as grids and people on the hypergrid want to come together. And I noticed that increasingly, I think both, I'm not sure whether both you and Han have started your own Discord servers, as have indeed many grids. Now, my final question to you before we just check the last minute questions elsewhere is how you all feel that, these auxiliary services are helping push the hypergrid, particularly Discord, of course. So let me start with you, Leighton, again, and I'm going to Han on.
I quite like Discord. I'm actually managing to get to quite a few events through postings on there, and it's a nice kind of layer between social media and kind of in-world. I think it's really nice. I see a lot of kind of communities kind of talking offline and kind of, but it's not distinct from in-world, it's linked to their communities, and I think that's a really good thing.
Absolutely. And you are of course familiar with it too.
Yeah, I feel really positive about Discord. It seems to be more focused in that you have the different groups. They tend to either moderate what is going on or they create separate rooms. So you've got the here's our lolcats in this room, here's our event notices in another room, so you can find what you want, as opposed to like Facebook where it's just all kind of dumped on you. So I think Discord's wonderful. I think, how do you pronounce it? MeWe, the other social media place? They have the same problem of it being a giant hot mess that Facebook has, at least in my opinion. So I didn't really care for that. But Discord is, I'm getting a lot of use from it. I'm getting the same organizational managerial use from Discord that I used to get from G+ in like 2016, 2017.
Right. Okay, so we're very serious to wrap up here. So I don't think you're on Discord, Krista, so I won't ask you about that. Leah, just quickly, yes or no for Discord? It's good in you. Words in your mouth. Leah?
Yes, hi. I didn't know if you'd asked Krista. We had 2 or 3 questions. We're really not going to be able to get to them, but Amber did ask about hypergrid transfer items and performance when folks come and get items, and of course the performance lag on her grid. And then Stone asked about hypergrid security, so we might want to think about that in the after our session chat. And as far as my concerns, I just want to wish everyone a great conference and keep hypergridding. Over to you.
Okay. There's no easy way to post it out to you, but if you download the Discord program, the other thing about it is a wonderful alternative to the rapidly disintegrating program called Skype. It is very much a personal Skype as well as sort of server channel system. Right, so that's it. If you are looking it up, look up Hypergrid Explorers and Creators. That's our Discord channel there. Now, I really do have to close this. I hate doing this. It always gets exciting towards the end, but I really have to do it because there's another panel coming up afterwards. So, to wrap, I'd like to thank Handheld. Thank you, Han.
Thank you for having me here. I really appreciate coming.
Okay, I would like to thank, as always, Krista Lopez. Thank you, Krista. I'd like to thank Lady Marshall. Thank you, Lady.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Pleasure.
And thank you to Leah, of course. So we'll see you next year. And of course, don't forget, conference continues. Bye for now.
Come on, I wear my sunglasses at night so I can watch you weave and breathe your storylines. I wear my sunglasses at night so I can keep track of the visions in my eyes. While she's deceiving me, 'cause my security has she got control of me. I turn to her and say, don't switch the flame on the sky and say, don't go. Don't masquerade with the sky and say, don't go. I can't believe it, you got me with the sky and say, don't go. I wear my sunglasses at night so I can forget my name while you collect your pay. I wear my sunglasses at night so I can see the light that's right before my eyes. While she's deceiving me, she cuts my security. She got control of me. I turn to her and say, don't switch the blade on the guy and say, don't walk. Don't masquerade with the guy and say, don't know. I can't believe it, you got me with the guy and say, don't know.
Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 1:30 to 2 o'clock session of the 2018 Open Simulator Community Conference. As a reminder to our in-world and web audience, you can view the full conference schedule at conference.opensimulator.org and tweet your questions or comments to @OpenSimCC with the hashtag #OSCC18. This session, we are happy to introduce Blenderland, the Italian Blender community virtual world. Our speakers today are Dario Galantini, and Cinzia Rasso. Dario is the Vice President of the Italia Association of Blender Italia, and Cinzia is a Research Fellow at the University College Dublin. Welcome all. Let's begin the session. Over to you, Cinzia.
Good afternoon to all. I'm Cinzia and I'm speaking on behalf of Dario Galantini, who is the real expert on Blender here, not me actually. We'd like to thank the organizers who kindly gave us the great opportunity to speak here in OSCC and promote our new and growing Italian Blender community. We'd also like to thank Michelle Techland, who is hosting us on her server, and also for giving us the opportunity to learn about this world. We're aware to be at the very beginning of our virtual trip, but we are as well aware that this is the best opportunity we have to learn as much as possible from you, from all of you. So let's go start now. Blender is the free and open source 3D creation suite. It supports the entire 3D pipeline: modeling, rigging, animation, simulation, rendering, compositing and motion tracking, even video editing and game creation. Originally, the program was developed as an internal application by the Dutch animation studio Neo Geo by the lead author, Ton Roosendaal, here in the peak. Today, Blender is a very active open source project and is led by the Blender Foundation. Advanced users employ Blender's API for Python scripting to customize the application and to write specialized tools. Often, these are included in Blender's future releases. Last release was the 2.79 stable or 2.8 as a beta version. Blender is well suited to individuals and small studios who benefit from its unified pipeline and responsive development process. The Blender Italian Association is born to promote in Italy the software for 3D Blender published by Blender Foundation, to acquire and propose explanatory contents on the use of Blender software, to relate the Italian professional and non-professional artists who use Blender software or who would like to learn how to use it, grant some visibility to professionals, where possible, financially support the Blender Foundation by the Development Fund system as a gold standard, to relate with the Blender Foundation itself, where possible, through participation and representation at the Blender Conference. The Italian Association has been constituted in 2017. The community is currently exponentially growing. Main objectives are contribution to the Blender Development Fund in order to maintain the software always available, make it as much possible as possible, create new relationships among the users, promote Blender in Italy through school, academy, companies, publish the Blender magazine Italia, and create more funding opportunities. The Blender Italian Association is very active on the major social channels: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. To date, on our YouTube channel, we can easily find videos from the Italian Blender Conference 2018 and courses from our certified tutors. On the website www.blender.it, we have the most recent versions of the courses and tutorials. Thanks to our forum section, a lot of help is provided by our users if any help is needed. Every year, in the Blender Italian Association meets in a conference free of charge for all those who want to participate. Blender Italian Conference 2018 Foligno. Is the most recent one. The topics ranged from the possibility to replace CAD with Blender in architecture to the Blender use in scenography creation for theater and video games production. All those topics have been covered by the leading experts of Blender on the Italian scene. Francesca Andresciani, developments of the training offer experience, Blender and work. Marco Caccini, Blender in architecture. Osvaldo Gervasi, project school job alternations from University of Perugia. Cristina Ducci, Blender in the theatrical, scenography and physical realization of the elements of the scenography as the backdrops and the sculptures. Claudio Naviglio, Blender as a complete product and a valid artistic and professional tool. Stefano Del Brocco, Blender valid tool for video makers. Cristina Ducci, Blender Magazine Italia, the Italian magazine dedicated to Blender, Alec Mugnozzo, possible users of Python in Blender, in both artistic and non-artistic fields. Other initiatives have been carried out by our associates throughout Italy in order to focus the general public attention on the enormous potential of Blender. On the website blender.it, which aims to be the point of communication and training of the Italian Blender community, there are several community projects at the moment, such as the contest, the forum itself, and iCorti, a new project whose aim is the creation of open movies short films for the Susan Awards, an event held every year in Amsterdam in conjunction with the Blender conference. Last but not least, Blender.it hosts Blender Italian Association, which, according to its stages, organizes conferences, workshops, courses, and much more. Blenderland is a project started in 2018 and foresees the initial construction of an island and a city where the members have the right to build up meeting areas, public places, and buildings. The most interesting part, however, is the presence of the virtual headquarters of the association, a virtual building containing meeting areas, classrooms, and a lecture hall for seminars. OpenSim was seen as a way to strengthen up the spirit of cohesion in a 3D family environment. Currently, the work can be considered completed at 50% rate and is expected to end at the beginning of the new year. At the moment, we have completed the headquarters, Blender headquarters plus meeting rooms, the landing, lighthouse plus the golf, the Blender box as a sandbox, and the landscape, the full island. The road and the railway with a proper train linking the landing to the Blender headquarters will be completed in the next few days. The goal to be reached is to have a complete and functional virtual island where to hold online courses and conferences dedicated to the use of Blender. Users can deepen their knowledge of the software and, thanks to qualified instructors, bring their creations into the virtual world using the land dedicated to Blender box. At the moment, Blenderland is used for training and self-training on Blender software, Blender Lab, production of scenarios and environments for virtual worlds, better communications between the members and between anyone who can access in the future Blender Box and Museum, and the exploration of Blender's potential in relation to virtual worlds. One of the objectives will be the opening of this environment to everyone as soon as it will be completed, approximately 2019. Soon, the Blender community has been experimenting with OpenSim. Up to now, the project has foreseen the following operational steps: creation of a working group for the design of the island, and to date, this working group is composed of Alessandro Passariello, Dario Galantini, Michele Occhioni, such as Michelle Techland, and Francesco Andresciani. Provide an avatar to all the associates initially as preset template and subsequently as avatar mesh. Creation of procedure of video tutorials explaining the viewer, as some members had no experience of using virtual platforms. On the right, figure D, and creation of procedures and tutorials for importing objects generated with Blender. Blender box development, training land for beginners and mesh import, definition spaces and dimensions, definition of the training modality, all the association meetings in Blenderland which are currently held online. In the future, we will grant guided tours to the public through hypergrids, the schools, public administration, and so on. Make it as much visible as possible. Create new relationships among the users. Promote Blender in Italy through school academy companies. Cooperate with the other virtual worlds, Blenderland partners all over the world. Create a market as a social space with the opportunity to sell their creations to all the users. Create a offer-demand job lab space. Create areas for recreation and socialization. Create interactions between people for the knowledge generation, integrating forums, wikis, and so on. Implement innovative technologies such as virtual reality viewers. Organizing the Italian Blender conference in the virtual world. So thank you for your attention, and if there is any question.
I haven't seen any questions to date, but I did see some comments that this is fabulous, that they love Blender. Galen's busy patting her Blender. And, and oh, there is a question. Did you make your slides in Blender? Did you make the slides in Blender?
No, but all the figures you see of the land, where everything was done in Blender, on the land.
Excellent. And Amber says, Blender is amazing. I use it every day. I do too. Now I know Marcus does cinematography. He does his video making using Blender.
It's amazing, yeah. There were a couple of new movies that came out in the last year, and they are really amazing. Lots of work behind it.
And we had a question from Olive Tree saying, is this open to the public, Blenderland?
Sure. Not at the moment. We are just completing the land, but it will be soon in 2019, probably. Our plan is to make it free and in 2019. Yeah, the program is free. It's totally free in Italy, yes.
Wonderful. Yes, and she was asking about the grid. So in 2019, it'll be available to the public. Wonderful. Any other questions? Would be cool to use the VR headset in Blenderland, Sun says. Well, I want to thank you for...
It will.
Oh, good. Wonderful. Wonderful. How complex is Blender, Eco Onis asks, for a beginner in 3D design? We're conferring with the expert. Go right ahead.
No, it's just a matter of exercise. I mean, it's a bit complicated at the very beginning, but as long as you work on it, it really gets easy to use.
Okay, we have a question from David Raggi, who says, slightly off topic, in film and video production, what would be the primary area in which one can integrate Blender and Open Simulator for an animated film project? And this might be a question for Marcus, too. Go right ahead. Did you want to confer with Dario? What they're asking is, if you're using Blender for film and video, is it possible to make an animated film using OpenSim?
Okay, my expert here says that as long as Blender is 3D complete as software, it can be used for each step in the video production.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Well, that's the end of our time. If you have additional questions, please send them to Dario or to Cinzia directly. And thank you, Dario and Cinzia, for a terrific presentation. As a reminder, oh, you're welcome. As a reminder to
anyone that wanted to play, so I was asking Joyce if you could do the music, so that we can run animations.
be good. Yep, music is playing.
All right. I can hear anything.
Really well done. Lots of fun.
Yes. Although the animation of the dance of performance is although because of his origin as a with his name of and he is already he's also he's a DJ and he taught for a long time this dance in different schools, many schools around there. It was amazing because it's like this Afro-Brazilian dance. Like you said, it's like mixed community. All of these choreographies that they learn. People, it showed me some videos. Amazing. Empathy. Everyone like really gathering, like a party, like the things that these dances, for instance, this one is like shooting. Like pointing a gun. Like it right away reminds me this thing with the new president, with hopefully not the president Bolsonaro, but so the dances are really like all thematics, all kinds of things from life. So it's also kind of a way of criticizing what's happening to us. It actually looks like it's a sexist dance because of the name. Like the thing with the kuduro, it's not what it means. Because so in the literally it's like hard ice, but it doesn't mean that. It's like more another language.
I got a couple comments from the audience and getting really close to the end here, so we're going to have to wrap up. But there's a comment that this dance, Kuduro 1, it looks like we're drumming as well. And so they just seem, very animated in that there's, like you said, there's actions from life and things happening. We might have time for one question, if anyone has one question.
So that we didn't get the music though. I'm not hearing it.
You yourself might not be hearing the music if it's playing in the world and you're not listening in the world. One question is, are there more dances available in the website?
Well, they will be available, not yet, but if you see there is a page there for that. So in some months, I hope they to be there, and normally they will be in 3 DVH that's actually the format to get into the virtual world. Now,
Okay. Okay.
maybe I will put them ready like through BB Hacker, because they had to go to BB Hacker, like, so these were prepared for going first and second live.
Okay, we need to wrap it up. So if you have information, go ahead and put that in the chat. And of course, you're all welcome to continue with questions in the chat individually. Thank you for a terrific presentation. It was wonderful. As a reminder to our audience, you can see what's coming up on the conference schedule at conference.opensimulator.org. Following this session, the next session will begin at 2:30 p.m. Right about 5 minutes in this keynote region, and is entitled OpenSim Adventures for Middle School Aged Children. Also, we encourage you to visit the OSCC 18 Poster Expo in the OSCC Expo 3 region to find accompanying information on presentations and explore the Hypergrid Tour resources in OSCC Expo 2 region, along with sponsor and crowdfunder booths located throughout all of the OSCC Expo regions. Thank you again to our speakers and the audience. We're happy to introduce a terrific couple of speakers for the session called OpenSim Adventures for Middle School Aged Children. Our speakers today are Mary Howard and Andrew Wheelock. Mary's a 6th grade teacher at Grand Isles Veronica Connor Middle School in New York, and Andrew is the technology coordinator for the Western New York area. Welcome all. Let's begin the session.
Hi everyone. I want to just quickly say some quick thank yous to Lear Lobo, who was really great at making sure we were keeping on track with this great conference. So thanks, Lear. Let me just begin by saying Mary and I have been working at this for probably 5, 6, 7 years. It seems to add up pretty quickly. So I'm going to just introduce where the project's been, and Mary really has been taking off with so much of what we've been doing, and is really powering things into the future and beyond. So to introduce the project, we started with the OpenSim project called the Islands of Enlightenment. Let's see if I can advance the slide here. And these projects were a grant-funded project through New York State Department of Education. And basically that got us started with the server and all of the, the startup money for professional development for teachers. And the first project that we did, hard time advancing the slide here, so I'm going to maybe go backwards first. And the first project was the Anne Frank project, or the Understanding the Holocaust project. And that was essentially we recreated the streets of Amsterdam in 1944. There we go. And the idea was to kind of have kids read the book, The Diary of a Young Girl, Anne Frank, and then have a virtual world experience in OpenSim to learn about not only the Holocaust, but to learn about Anne Frank and have a visual experience to go with the powerful book. And what we found was kids really got a lot out of it because they got to make presentations, they got to make museum exhibits, and they also had to do a lot of writing about the Holocaust. So that was the first project that we rolled out for students. The second project was called The Heir of the King, and this is where Mary came into my mad little world here and started really being not only a digital creator, but I'd like to call Mary the curriculum whisperer, because she is a really talented curriculum writer and has a lot of creative ideas, as you'll see when I turn the mic over to her. But the second year was the Heir of the King project, which was a medieval virtual world. We gamified it, and we really made a lot of, we kind of created a medieval world for kids to walk through, and as they leveled up, they got to go into the castle. By the time they got to the castle, then there was kind of an Arthurian legend that took place, and students were able to try and solve the mystery of who was the rightful heir of the king. So that was really a great passion project for us, and the kids were just amazing. Had a lot of good time with that. The third year, we have a local Frank Lloyd Wright Darwin creation called the Darwin Martin House, and we had the students, as probably all of you know who work with students, there's such a passion for building that the students just dug right into building, and so we contacted our local Frank Lloyd Wright Museum, the Darwin Martin House, and they were a really great partner. We had the kids create virtual kind of architecture, and again, we found just it was amazing that the kids understood the principles of architecture, not only just of Frank Lloyd Wright, but just general principles, and then made their own designs. And again, Mary was a really big part of this project, as well as a lot of other teachers. But Mary really did a lot. We toured the house, and then the kids really took it to the next level and created. And then just a couple of other sidebar projects that we did with some other local teachers. Sheila Cannon, who has since retired, sadly, but we did our digital art museum project. So kids not only created art out of world and brought it in world, but they also create their own digital projects. So that was one of the other projects we did, and that's kind of an avenue that I want to explore in the future. And then we also had, and this is one of my favorite days, is I had some teachers that have been, I had one teacher who was kind of a Civil War reenactor in the real world, and I put him together with some awesome history teachers that have been doing a lot of OpenSim building. You can see their names there. And we spent the day just recreating a Civil War battlefield, including a medical tent, and it was just a really awesome experience to bring teachers together and let them create, not only creating the content, the historical content, but then having them create the history along with that. And that really kind of were just some of the things that we've involved in this, and I really want to kind of turn it over to Mary, because Mary is such an inspirational teacher to work with, because she took what we had and then really just powered it beyond it. And Mary's not the only one, but Mary certainly has been just a leading force in education, not just in virtual worlds, but other technologies, and now she's starting to blend those in. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Mary and let her really tell you the cool stuff that she's been carrying on with.
Thank you. That was quite a build-up. It's hard to sit quietly for such a long period of time. You're a teacher and you're used to talking all the time. So just to back up a little bit and give some background on myself, I am a 6th grade teacher, and for about 15 years I taught social studies along with ELA, and then I've just recently switched to teaching ELA in science, but still in the 6th grade. And so the title of our session is OpenSim Adventures for Middle School, and a lot of what Spit just shared, really is the
the genesis and kind of the evolution of what we've been able to do with OpenSim over the years. And it's really allowed me to buy into the program and truly see the value of using OpenSim for instruction and what it can do for my students. And it's quite a powerful thing. And I know I'm probably speaking to a crowd of people that are drinking from the same Kool-Aid. And yet, you know, I have example after example of things that have changed students' perception of education and instruction, and that, you know, gosh, school can actually be fun and engaging. And I really credit my experiences with using Open Simulator and my collaboration with Smith as the reason a lot of that was able to happen. So the projects that they've shared, you know, again, over the course of the past 5 years have been wonderful. And then the slide you see up here was just sort of another one where I took what I do already in the classroom. I do a lot of scavenger hunts. I do a lot of breakout activities, escape rooms, you know, really anything to keep students engaged. And so I wanted to try kind of an amalgamation of escape room principles and virtual environments. And that's where this Westing Game project came from. And essentially, and I don't know if we can kind of slowly go through the slides, the kids read the book The Westing Game by Alan Raskin, and they were provided a mansion. So you can see the picture here is the mansion. And in this mansion, we built them a scavenger hunt. So after they finished the novel, I wanted to have them evaluate every single character in the book to sort of prepare and what the characteristics of the characters were. So we can go to the next slide here, Spiff. This was the kind of what they had to do is they had to search for these dollar bills. So I kind of scattered dollar bills all throughout the mansion, and I, of course, programmed them so when the kids click on it, a little note card pops up, and the note card gives them information about the character, but they have to type in the chat bar the answer. And as they do that, they sort of collected the names of all of these different characters. And you can keep on going here, Smith. They had to type in on a certain channel, because I didn't want them seeing each other's answers, who the character was. So you can see here they typed in Sandy McSuthers was the answer to the question, and then it gave them a teleport. So they demonstrated their knowledge, teleported to another location. We keep on going with the slides. And one of my favorite parts about this scavenger hunt was something I've been trying to do more and more is bring in AR and VR together at the same time. And now, granted, just using a red lens isn't necessarily augmented reality, but for me, it was kind of the first steps in realizing, you know, you can do both. And so it's try to imagine the students sitting in the computer lab, and they all had little red lenses. And when they teleported to this new location, I hid all of these panels up in the, you know, up in the woods, I guess you could say, and they would hold their red lens literally up to the screen, and it would reveal a phrase, and the phrase went along with a poem that they were collecting. So they went from station to station, teleporting from location to location as they would answer a question, and then hold the red lens up to the screen to collect the answers. So this is sort of that starting point for me when it came to integrating both, you know, AR and VR, and really seeing more and more of an interactive component along with the building component. Because, as Spiff mentioned, we did a lot of building. We built through the Darwin Martin House, and the students built their own inventions in a mall, in a virtual mall. So this kind of was just another step in, okay, I'm going to transform my instruction. I'm going to create a scavenger hunt in a virtual environment that I've already used in the classroom. And I have to say, they absolutely loved it. And we can go to the next slide here. When they finally achieved their objective and they collected all of the lines to the poem, they would be teleported to the top, there it is, to the top of the mansion, and they had to type in the answer, and then the answer was compass. So it was a poem that I wrote, and they just collected all the lines of the poem, and they would do the chicken dance on the top of the Westing mansion. And so, trust me, it was absolutely hysterical to see all these students standing up there on the top of the mansion doing the chicken dance with their avatars. That was all they wanted to do. They were just very, very excited about, you know, getting a solution. And it was the same level of excitement that you see in a breakout if you've ever done one, or that you see in an escape room. It was just this genuine joy, you know, in learning. And that was pretty incredible. And so moving forward this year, I am teaching science, as I mentioned. And it's really hard teaching a brand new curriculum. It's brand new curriculum for me, brand new curriculum for the district. We're following the next gen science standards, and we're using kind of that 5E format. So we start with a phenomenon, the kids explore via stations, and we explain things, they expand and elaborate their knowledge. And so I've been really kind of struggling with how can I continue to use virtual environments with a brand new curriculum and everything else. We all know it's not fun. Starting from scratch, it's a really difficult thing to do. So my idea here is this science island. And so I did build, well, actually Smith gave me some mall places, and the students are receiving avatars, and I've got to get them trained. I've got to go through our boot camp. I've got to teach them how to use the virtual teleporting and everything that comes along with teaching OpenSim, and then they're going to get this lab place. And what we've been doing is using it as evidence of learning. So after we finish every single unit, they have a section in their interactive notebooks where we call it the AHA connections. It's sort of like, okay, what did we learn about Charles' law and Boyle's law? They go back and they write a summary. And what did we learn about density? They go back in and they write a little summary. So they're using their AHA connections in their interactive notebook to go into their science labs and build evidence of their learning. And so in the picture here, you can see a density column. There's an H2O molecule sitting there. There's examples of physical and chemical change. So as the course of the year continues, really all we've done so far this year is matter, 12 weeks of matter. So apparently it does matter. And so all we've done is matter so far. But they're putting the evidence in their little science labs. And I'm really excited about the possibilities here. Instead of giving these assessments, matter does matter, instead of giving the assessment, they can see, we can see the evidence of learning in their labs. But we're also, using those building principles, and I'm teaching them how to, shape objects and how to lay objects down and how to expand the objects and everything else. But they have that sense of ownership because it's their science lab, and so that part's been really exciting to see begin to unfold. We're not nearly where I want to be with it yet, but this is kind of the idea, and this is the direction we're going to be heading. It's only December, so I'm very excited to see where this particular project goes. So then going back to that topic of kind of that amalgamation of AR and VR, so I mentioned earlier, I do believe I see a merge cube sitting on the table. And so, I realize this is not, merge cube is not OpenSim, and some people might even, scoff at things like CoSpaces because they really aren't OpenSim, and they don't have the power that OpenSim has when it comes to having an avatar and being able to build to the depth that you're able to build. And yet, this has been a really good starting spot for us in our classroom using Tinkercad. And so we used Tinkercad early in the year when we were designing molecules, and it was actually the Tinkercad molecule that I was able to convert and bring a mesh file into the OpenSim so that their actual molecule is in their little science stores or their science shops. And so Tinkercad has kind of been our starting point when it comes to building. Just learning what a builder's platform is, learning how to look at things in a 3D mode, learning how to manipulate objects, stretch them, rotate them, all of those details. So Tinkercad was our starting point. And now MergeCube and CoSpaces has kind of been my little side journey that I've been on recently with the students. And if I could, I'd love to ask how many of you are familiar with MergeCube. Maybe you can perhaps put in the chat. Have you heard about it? Are you familiar with it? Do you know what the MergeCube is? So I've got a couple people saying yes. It's important to ask your audience what they know before we go on a little tangent. And if you're not familiar with the MergeCube, it is really just an augmented reality trigger. The MergeCube allows for any merge app available in this host of Miniverse. There's a website, it's miniverse.io. And there are, so a lot of people don't know what it is. Oh, you're in for a treat because these are pretty cool. The miniverse.io is the website, and it has probably about 40 at this point different apps that work with the MergeCube that allow augmented reality to trigger. So the MergeCube serves as a target. You open up a MergeCube app, and the Merge Cube will trigger whatever the app is holding. Like, for example, they have a solar system app, and if you point the solar system app at Merge Cube, you can see the solar system. And if you do the human body one, you can see an augmented reality human body. So that's been really neat. So we've been able to do a few things with the Merge Cube in the classroom. And it's nice because the Merge Cube is cheap. You can often find them on sale at Walmart for $1. So I have 60 of them right now in my classroom that a parent donated. And yet, it's just another tool that can engage the students. Now, what I discovered literally yesterday is what's showing up on the slideshow right now. And that is the AR-VR overlap, that amalgamation. And so I designed a Merge Cube snow globe in a site called CoSpaces. And I've got the link up there if anybody's interested in testing it out. You could actually, hopefully on your digital device, if you're sitting at your computer with a device, you could open that and then aim it at the screen right now at that target that's showing up on the screen. That little, where the arrow is pointing down at a Merge Cube target. And if the planets align and all is well, I have a feeling you'll actually be able to trigger that little snow globe that you can see up on the screen. So you're basically using the OpenSim and the virtual reality to trigger augmented reality. So last night I was pretty darn excited about the potential of this. So I'm kind of thinking in terms of my scavenger hunt for the Westing Mansion and how I could embed targets within it. And I could use perhaps HP Reveal, or I could use the Merge Cube, or even QR codes, and have kind of this, I don't know, phygital or AR, VR experience for the students within the virtual environment. So my brain is spinning with the possibility of some sort of escape or scavenger hunt. Does Woo mean it worked? I'm very curious if anybody was successfully able to get it to work. It did work for me last night when I held up the target, held up the app, and aimed it at the screen. So at this point, that was really all I really wanted to talk about. I just kind of wanted to share some ideas and thoughts using these types of tools with middle schoolers, and certainly we can close up shop or open it up to questions.
Hey, does anyone have any questions for either of our speakers? I think this is fascinating, and I do love the Merge Cube. I just myself started playing around with the possibility of thinking about writing an app. So I was really excited to see it sitting there next to the couch.
I guess they're pretty open source, is what I've been learning. Is they're open.
Well, they're available. There's yeah, you can get a license to actually create an app for it. So yes, almost open source, not quite.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Not being a developer, that's terminology I'm not familiar with.
Lisa asked how you learned about the Merge Cube.
Let's see here. How did I learn about the Merge Cube? This is a good question. I was at ISTE, and no, I take it back. I actually was Googling one day, hold a hologram in your hand. I literally typed into my search bar, hold a hologram in your hand, and this toy popped up, and it was the Merge Cube. And I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting, and it was $15. And so I just bought it because I wanted it for my nephews, and I figured I could play with it too. And from there, I discovered that there was so much more you could do with the Merge Cube than just play with it as a toy. I know, my link isn't working for me either as I'm sitting here trying it. Maybe I'll toss in the local chat a different one that you can try, one of the Merge Cube apps. The problem is you would have to download it. And then the red lens is just, I just bought red cellophane, believe it or not, at the dollar store. And what I do is on the screen, I just upload an image that I created in a Google slide, and I can certainly share that with you. And I hide cyan color text beneath, red text, pink text, and yellow, so it kind of masks it out. But when you hold the red lens up to the screen, the cyan color shows through because it filters out all the other three colors, and it reveals a word or a hidden picture or something like that. I think of it as in the old Cracker Jack box days. They had those little red lens games sometimes in there, and I think there's another game, I don't know if it's categories or something like that the kids know of, but that they also use it.
Mary, could I just throw in one more thing before we start to wrap up? Mary and I are both part of ISTE's Virtual Environments Network, and we have our meetings in Second Life basically almost every Tuesday of the month. So by all means, for those of you out there, come on into Second Life and join us. We do have a kind of winter holiday social event this Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. So come on and join us. And again, we're always looking for people to present at the Virtual Environments Playground at ISTE. So if you'd like to join us in any of those pieces, I'll make sure I put the link to the ISTE event website and connect with us there as well.
Okay, I'm going to hop in here and thank you both, Mary and Andrew, for a terrific presentation. Feel free, of course, to continue your conversations and ask you questions individually after the session ends. As a reminder to our audience, you can see what's coming up on the conference schedule at conference.opensimulator.org. Following this session, the next session will be, I think there's a break after this, and then the session after that will be Community Virtual Library Resource, Library Opening 2019. Also, we encourage you to visit the OSCC 18 Poster Expo in the OSCC Expo 3 region to find accompanying information on presentations and explore the Hypervid resources in OSCC Expo 2 region, along with sponsor and crowdfunder booths located throughout all of the OSCC Expo regions. Thank you again to our speakers and the audience.